In the summer of 1952, the skies over Washington, D.C. were not just filled with clouds and birds. They were disturbed by strange, unexplainable phenomena that would soon become a defining moment in the history of UFO encounters. The events that unfolded over the course of several days in July would capture the attention of the world, making headlines, stirring public curiosity, and drawing the attention of government agencies that had, up until then, maintained an air of skepticism or indifference toward UFO sightings. It all began on the night of July 19th, when air traffic controllers at Washington National Airport, now Reagan National Airport, detected unusual objects on radar screens. These objects were moving in ways that defied conventional explanations. At first, they appeared to be small blips, probably a malfunction or a case of mistaken radar identification. But as the night wore on, the movements of these objects became more erratic and increasingly difficult to ignore. The radar operators tracked the objects for over an hour, as they would appear suddenly, zip across the screen at incredible speeds, and then disappear just as quickly. The objects were not just appearing on radar. They were also being spotted visually by airport personnel and military pilots. One of the first eyewitnesses to the strange phenomenon was air traffic controller Edward Nugent, who later recounted seeing a series of bright lights moving in strange patterns. He described the lights as moving in a way that I had never seen before, almost as though they were dancing in the sky. Nugent's account was corroborated by other witnesses at the airport, who reported seeing the strange lights flicker and dart in unpredictable directions. As the lights continued to behave in such a peculiar manner, the confusion and alarm among the witnesses deepened. The sighting quickly escalated when military jets were dispatched to intercept these unknown objects. On the morning of July 20th, 2 military jets from Andrews Air Force Base were sent into the air to investigate the phenomena. What transpired next only deepened the mystery. The pilots, who were experienced and trained to deal with various types of aircraft, reported seeing a massive, luminous object hovering in the sky. The object appeared to be a light, but its shape and size defied clear identification. Some of the pilots later claimed that it was a disc-shaped object, while others described it as a glowing orb or a metallic sphere. Regardless of the shape, what was unmistakable was that the object moved in ways no known aircraft could replicate. As the jets approached, the object seemed to dart away at impossible speeds, dodging their attempts to close the distance. In a surreal moment, the object seemed to stop, hover in midair, and then shoot off again, vanishing at a speed that the pilots could not match. The pilots reported feeling a sense of awe and bewilderment as they watched the object evade them effortlessly. The idea that this could be an experimental military aircraft was considered, but the behavior of the object seemed to transcend the known capabilities of any technology of the time. The Washington, D.C. UFO sightings weren't confined to one night. The following weekend, on July 26th and 27th, the phenomena continued. More radar sightings were reported, and more visual confirmations came in from both civilian and military personnel. A particularly unsettling detail was the fact that the radar operators tracked the objects moving over restricted areas, including the White House and the Pentagon. The fact that these mysterious objects seemed to be specifically hovering over the nation's capital raised questions that no one, at the time, was ready to answer. In the aftermath of the sightings, the U.S. Air Force launched a formal investigation under the auspices of Project Blue Book, the Air Force's ongoing study into unidentified flying objects. Blue Book was tasked with documenting and investigating UFO reports from civilians and military personnel. The initial findings of the investigation were less than conclusive. In a press conference, the Air Force's official explanation for the sightings was that the objects seen over Washington, D.C. were simply a result of temperature inversions. Temperature inversions can create atmospheric distortions that cause radar signals to bounce, creating false readings. This, according to the Air Force, was what had caused the strange radar phenomena. As for the visual sightings of UFOs, the official line was that they were simply stars or aircraft seen through a haze, which created an illusion of erratic motion. However, many who were involved in the events, including the military pilots who saw the objects up close, rejected these explanations. They knew what they had seen, and it didn't match the official narrative. Some went so far as to say that the Air Force was deliberately downplaying or misinterpreting the events in order to avoid causing public panic or revealing secrets about experimental military technology. One of the most vocal critics of the official explanation was Captain Edward Ruppelt, who had been the head of Project Blue Book at the time. Ruppelt admitted in his later writings that the DC sightings were among the most perplexing and well-documented UFO encounters the Air Force had ever investigated. He also acknowledged the difficulty in providing a satisfactory explanation, stating that the Air Force had been under considerable pressure to close the case with an explanation, even if it wasn't fully convincing. The 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO sightings were a pivotal moment in UFO history. They were witnessed by many credible individuals, including military personnel, air traffic controllers, and pilots, making them some of the most compelling UFO sightings ever documented. Yet, despite the wealth of evidence, the official response from the government and the military was to dismiss the event as nothing more than a combination of misidentifications, natural phenomena, and atmospheric anomalies. This official explanation left many questions unanswered, fueling further speculation and skepticism about what had truly occurred. The incident also marked a shift in the public's perception of UFOs. Before the Washington, D.C. sightings, UFO encounters were often dismissed as the delusions of fringe individuals or the result of hoaxes. But the D.C. sightings, with their high-level witnesses and clear documentation, forced many to take the phenomenon seriously. The event sparked widespread public interest, and UFO sightings became a regular part of news cycles for the years to come. It would also set the stage for future UFO investigations and shape the narrative around alien encounters for decades. Despite the official attempts to close the case, the Washington, D.C. UFO incident remains a cornerstone of UFO history. The question of what happened that summer, what the objects were, where they came from, and why they were hovering over the heart of the U.S. government remains unanswered. The 1952 sightings continue to be a source of fascination for UFO researchers and conspiracy theorists alike, who argue that the government knows more than it is willing to admit. For those who witnessed the events, however, the memories of those strange lights and the impossible maneuvers of the UFOs remain vivid to this day, a reminder that there are still mysteries in the sky that we may never fully understand. On the night of October 4, 1967, a small, quiet fishing village in Nova Scotia, Canada, became the site of one of the most perplexing and mysterious UFO encounters in Canadian history. The Shag Harbor UFO incident, as it would come to be known, involved multiple witnesses, an official government investigation, and a series of strange events that remain unexplained to this day. What set this encounter apart from many others was not only the large number of credible eyewitnesses, but also the response from the Canadian government, which took the incident seriously enough to launch a full-scale search and investigation. It all started shortly after 11 p.m. when a group of local residents observed an unusual light in the sky. The light was described as bright and yellow, almost like a lantern or a flare, but it was moving in a way that was unlike anything they had ever seen. The light appeared to be descending rapidly toward the ground, and at first, the witnesses assumed it was a plane in distress or a possible crash. However, as the object continued its descent and hovered just above the water, they began to realize that what they were seeing was no ordinary aircraft. Several people in the village, fishermen, residents, and even a local RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, came forward to describe the same strange event. They all reported seeing a large, glowing object hovering over the harbor. The object was described as being round or oval in shape, with a yellowish light that illuminated the surrounding area. As it hovered over the water, the object began to move erratically, darting back and forth, as though it were in search of something. Some witnesses reported seeing a series of smaller lights trailing behind the main object, which suggested that it might have been a larger craft accompanied by smaller craft, or perhaps it was a single craft capable of dividing into separate parts. As the object moved closer to the water's surface, It seemed to drop below the horizon, disappearing from sight. At this point, witnesses began to speculate that the object had either crashed into the water or had landed somewhere beyond the harbor. However, when they went to investigate, they found no debris or wreckage of any kind. Instead, they were greeted by something even more baffling: a strange, foamy substance floating on the surface of the water where the object had disappeared. It was as though the water had been disturbed by something massive, but no visible signs of a crash or impact were present. The most remarkable aspect of the Shag Harbor UFO incident was the response from the Canadian government and military. The following day, on October 5th, the Royal Canadian Navy dispatched several ships to search the waters of Shag Harbor, convinced that there had been some kind of crash. They combed the harbor and its surrounding areas for several days, even diving into the waters in an attempt to find wreckage or other physical evidence. But despite their efforts, no debris, wreckage, or craft was ever found. In fact, the search turned up nothing that could explain what had occurred that night. The Canadian government's involvement in the investigation was relatively quiet, but it was significant. The Department of National Defense, DND, became involved, and an official report was issued. However, the report was less than conclusive. According to the Canadian government's findings, the object that had been witnessed by multiple witnesses was never conclusively identified, and the investigation ended without any official explanation. The government's silence on the matter only added to the intrigue surrounding the case, leading many UFO enthusiasts and researchers to speculate that the Canadian government knew more than it was willing to admit. What made the Shag Harbor UFO incident even more fascinating was the number of witnesses who came forward to corroborate each other's accounts. In addition to the residents of Shag Harbor, numerous other individuals, such as police officers, military personnel, and fishermen, reported seeing the same thing. Even the U.S. government took notice of the event, as it was reported that American intelligence agencies had been monitoring the situation. Some of the U.S. Navy's radar systems had also picked up the mysterious object, suggesting that whatever was in the sky over Shag Harbor was not just a local event, but something that had been tracked across international borders. Theories surrounding the Shag Harbor incident have varied widely, with explanations ranging from the plausible to the extraordinary. Some researchers have suggested that the event was simply a misidentified conventional aircraft, perhaps a military plane that had gone off course or an experimental craft from a nearby U.S. military base. Others, however, have argued that the object was something far stranger, an extraterrestrial craft. This theory is supported by the behavior of the object, which seemed to defy the known laws of physics and aviation. Witnesses described the object as having no visible means of propulsion, yet it moved effortlessly across the sky. Some have even pointed to the foamy substance that appeared in the harbor after the object's descent, suggesting that it could have been some sort of byproduct of alien technology or even the remnants of a craft's landing process. Despite the lack of physical evidence, the Shag Harbor UFO incident has remained a key piece of UFO lore in Canada. In the years since the event, numerous books, articles, and documentaries have been produced about the incident, exploring the various theories and attempting to piece together the evidence. The case has also inspired numerous UFO researchers to look into other unexplained phenomena in the region, as there have been other reports of strange lights and objects over the waters of Shag Harbor and its surrounding areas. One of the most compelling aspects of the Shag Harbor UFO encounter is the psychological effect it had on the witnesses. Many of the people who were involved in the event were ordinary, hard-working individuals who had no prior interest in UFOs or the paranormal. They were fishermen, police officers, and civilians, and they had no reason to fabricate or exaggerate what they had seen. For these witnesses, the Shag Harbor incident represented a profound moment in their lives. Some became lifelong UFO researchers, while others were simply left with the nagging question of what had truly happened that night. In interviews and documentaries, many of the witnesses have said that they had no doubt in their minds that what they saw was not a conventional aircraft. They believe they witnessed something extraordinary, and the experience has had a lasting impact on their lives. The Shag Harbor UFO incident has also had a lasting impact on UFO research in Canada. It remains one of the most well-documented and thoroughly investigated UFO events in Canadian history. For many, it represents a turning point in the way UFOs are taken seriously by both the public and the government. Despite the official dismissals and the lack of a concrete explanation, the Shag Harbor incident remains an enduring mystery, one that continues to captivate those who seek answers to the question of whether we are truly alone in the universe. In conclusion, the 1967 Shag Harbor UFO incident is a fascinating and enduring mystery that raises more questions than answers. It is a case that involves multiple credible witnesses, a government investigation, and a series of strange events that have never been satisfactorily explained. The lack of physical evidence and the silence from the Canadian government only serve to deepen the intrigue surrounding the case. Whether the object seen that night was a secret military craft, a misidentified natural phenomenon, or something far more extraordinary, the Shag Harbor UFO incident remains one of the most compelling and mysterious UFO encounters in history, a story that continues to be explored and debated by UFO enthusiasts, researchers, and curious minds around the world. On the night of September 19, 1976, a series of unusual and unnerving events unfolded in the skies above Tehran, Iran, that would later be classified as one of the most significant UFO encounters in modern history. The Tehran UFO incident, as it is now known, not only involved multiple military personnel and radar operators, but it also introduced evidence that some UFO phenomena could interfere with advanced military technology, an unsettling realization that would lead to further investigations into the nature of such mysterious encounters. It all began around 10:30 p.m., when Iranian air traffic controllers at Marabad International Airport noticed an unidentified object on their radar screens. Initially, the object was detected as a small blip on the radar, but it quickly grew in size and began moving in a way that was completely uncharacteristic of any known aircraft. As the object maneuvered across the radar, it appeared to hover in the air before accelerating at extraordinary speeds. Air traffic controllers, who were already concerned about the object's unusual movements, immediately notified the Iranian military. The first response came from a squadron of Iranian F-4 Phantom fighter jets, one of the most advanced aircraft in the Iranian military at the time. As the F-4 pilots took off from Tehran's airbase and flew toward the object, they had no idea what to expect. As they approached the location where the UFO had been spotted, they were suddenly met with an unsettling sight. The object, which was described as a glowing, disc-shaped craft, was hovering in the sky. It emitted an intense, bright light that illuminated the surrounding area, and it appeared to be motionless at first. But as the F-4 pilots approached the object, something extraordinary happened. The UFO seemed to react to their presence. One of the pilots later described the experience as surreal. The glowing object appeared to be aware of the incoming jets, and as the pilots got closer, it suddenly shot away at an incredible speed, disappearing from their radar screens. The pilots attempted to follow it, but the object was able to outmaneuver their fighter jets with ease, performing erratic, rapid movements that defied the limits of conventional aviation. The pilots' instruments began to malfunction as they pursued the object, adding an additional layer of confusion and concern. The radar systems on the F-4 jets began to show strange, distorted readings, while the pilots' radios experienced interference and static. One of the pilots, who was later interviewed about the encounter, recalled that his aircraft's weapon systems and navigation instruments were completely disabled during the pursuit. It was as if the object had a way of disrupting the electronics on the jets, rendering them temporarily useless. This interference was not isolated to the jets alone. On the ground, the military radar operators in Tehran were also tracking the UFO, and their systems were similarly affected. As the object moved erratically through the sky, radar operators began to lose contact with it, only to regain tracking when it reappeared. The interference was so intense that at one point, the radar operators feared the object might be jamming their systems. What they couldn't explain was how an object, with seemingly no visible means of propulsion, could perform such advanced maneuvers, while simultaneously disrupting the most sophisticated radar and communication technology available to the Iranian military. As the night wore on, the situation became more bizarre. The UFO didn't just hover in one place. It seemed to move between different locations at breakneck speeds. The pilots, frustrated by their inability to engage the object, were ordered to return to base. But the story didn't end there. Shortly after the pilots had landed and debriefed another aircraft, this time a cargo plane with military personnel aboard, was sent out to investigate the strange events. As this new flight crew approached the area where the UFO had last been tracked, they too reported seeing the glowing, disc-shaped object. However, what was most chilling was that the UFO once again seemed to interact with the aircraft. The object was described as descending to an extremely low altitude before suddenly shooting off into the distance, faster than the cargo plane could follow. One of the most unsettling aspects of the Tehran UFO encounter was the intense electromagnetic interference that accompanied the object's movements. It was later revealed that the F-4 pilots had experienced a similar phenomenon to what had been reported in other UFO encounters, electronic equipment failure, when in close proximity to the UFO. This phenomenon, which is sometimes referred to as electromagnetic interference (EMI), has been reported in numerous other UFO cases. Some researchers suggest that the UFOs may be using highly advanced technology that interferes with electrical systems, either intentionally or as a side effect of their propulsion methods. In the case of the Tehran encounter, this interference seemed to be a deliberate act of disruption, as though the UFO was aware of the military jet's attempts to engage it. The Tehran UFO incident, though not widely known outside of UFO circles at the time, soon gained attention from various UFO researchers and analysts. The incident was investigated by both the Iranian military and independent UFO researchers, who were intrigued by the consistent reports of the pilots, radar operators, and ground personnel. As more details emerged, it became clear that the event was not just a case of an isolated sighting, but a well-documented, multifaceted encounter with an object that seemed to possess capabilities far beyond anything known to human technology. The Iranian government, however, was cautious in its response to the UFO sighting. The military, while acknowledging the event, did not make any official public statements, and the details surrounding the encounter remained classified for many years. The lack of official government transparency in dealing with the Tehran UFO encounter led to further speculation about the true nature of the event and the possible cover-up of information. Some UFO researchers have argued that the Iranian government's reluctance to disclose details about the encounter was due to the advanced technology that was involved in the incident, and the fear that such information might reveal military secrets. Adding to the intrigue of the Tehran incident is the fact that the event was not isolated. Many UFO researchers have noted that Iran has had a history of unusual UFO sightings and encounters, with multiple incidents occurring in the years before and after the Tehran UFO encounter. Some theorists argue that Iran, with its political and military position in the Middle East, may have been a prime target for UFO activity, given its strategic significance and proximity to areas of international tension. The Tehran UFO incident remains one of the most significant encounters of the 20th century, not just because of the high level of military involvement, but also because it provided clear evidence of the advanced technological capabilities of the object involved. The event continues to fuel debates within the UFO community and among skeptics about the true nature of UFOs. While some argue that the encounter was simply the result of a misidentified military aircraft or some form of psychological phenomenon, others point to the electronic interference, the erratic movements of the UFO, and the involvement of multiple credible witnesses as evidence of something far more extraordinary. In the years following the Tehran incident, UFO enthusiasts and researchers have continued to investigate the event, piecing together the testimonies of the pilots, radar operators, and military personnel who were involved. The Tehran UFO incident has become a symbol of the ongoing mystery surrounding UFOs, and it has solidified Iran's place in UFO lore as a location where extraordinary encounters with unknown objects have taken place. Whether the objects seen that night were extraterrestrial craft, experimental military technology, or something else entirely, the Tehran UFO encounter remains one of the most captivating and unexplained events in the annals of UFO history. The night of December 26, 1980, remains one of the most baffling and compelling UFO encounters in history. The Rendlesham Forest Incident, which unfolded near two U.S. Air Force bases in Suffolk, England, RAF Woodbridge and RAF Bentwaters, has continued to captivate both UFO enthusiasts and skeptics alike. What began as a routine patrol of the forest by military personnel quickly turned into an event that would stir a series of investigations, conflicting testimonies, and endless speculation. The incident has since been labeled the British Roswell due to its military context, high-profile witnesses, and the eerie nature of the events that unfolded that cold winter night. It was late in the evening when the first reports began to surface. Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston and Airman John Burroughs, along with other military personnel stationed at RAF Woodbridge, were alerted to strange lights seen in the forest. Initially, they believed it could be a downed aircraft, perhaps a light aircraft that had crashed in the dense woods. The weather was clear, and the airfield was located in a quiet, rural area with little civilian traffic. But as the two men approached the area of the sighting, they were faced with something they could not explain. According to Burroughs and Peniston, they saw a glowing object about 100 yards away, nestled among the trees. The object emitted a soft, bright light and appeared to be hovering just above the ground. Unlike any aircraft they had ever encountered, the object was described as triangular, with a series of lights around its edges. At first, they assumed it was some sort of military craft, perhaps part of an experimental program, but as they approached, they began to realize it wasn't any known craft. The object did not make any noise, nor did it seem to exhibit any characteristics typical of a conventional aircraft. In fact, it appeared to be completely silent, a fact that struck both men as incredibly strange, considering the size and brightness of the object. As they continued to approach the craft, Peniston took note of several other peculiarities. The craft appeared to be metallic, with smooth, reflective surfaces, and its edges were sharp, almost crystalline in appearance. Peniston, driven by an instinctive need to gather as much detail as possible, moved closer and eventually touched the surface of the object. He later claimed that when his hand made contact with the craft, he felt an intense electrical charge, and the surface was hot to the touch. While he described the object as being solid, its surface seemed to hum with some form of energy. At this point, Burroughs and Peniston realized that the object was not a conventional aircraft. It was not a helicopter, plane, or drone, nor could it have been a weather balloon or other simple explanation. They watched in awe as the object shifted positions, moving silently and effortlessly between the trees. It then began to ascend, rising rapidly into the sky before vanishing into the distance. As they tried to follow the object, they found themselves unable to track it, as it moved too quickly and unpredictably. Later, when the two men returned to the base and reported what they had seen, they were told to keep quiet about the encounter. However, they were not alone in their strange experiences that night. Shortly after their sighting, other personnel stationed at RAF Bentwaters also began to witness strange lights and objects in the sky. One of the most significant moments came when Colonel Charles Halt, the deputy base commander at Bentwaters, and his team of military personnel were sent to investigate the incidents further. They arrived in the forest the following evening, on December 27, 1980, only to encounter more mysterious phenomena. Halt and his team followed a path similar to Peniston and Burroughs, but this time, their observations would be even more startling. According to Halt, his team observed several bright, flashing lights in the distance, which appeared to be moving in unusual patterns. He ordered his men to approach the lights, and as they did, they encountered a strange, pulsing light in the trees. Halt described the light as having a red and blue hue, and it appeared to be coming from a triangular object hovering just above the ground. The object was described as being extremely bright, emitting a pulsating light that seemed to shift in intensity. At one point, Halt's team was able to get within 50 yards of the object. The men noted that it was emitting no sound, and despite its proximity, they could not feel any heat coming from it. Halt himself later reported that when he shone a flashlight at the object, the light seemed to reflect off the surface in a way that was unnatural. He also recalled hearing a series of strange sounds, which some of his men described as static, while others reported hearing a hum or buzz. The team also noted that the object seemed to be moving in a controlled manner, almost as if it was responding to their presence. Halt recorded the events of that night in a now famous memo, known as the Halt Memo, which he later delivered to the Ministry of Defense (MOD) in the UK. In the memo, Halt described in detail the strange lights, the erratic movements of the object, and the sense of dread that permeated the entire encounter. According to Halt's report, the object eventually flew off at high speed, disappearing into the night sky. The entire event lasted several hours and involved multiple sightings and first-hand accounts from credible military personnel. The fact that the incident was reported by high-ranking officers, including Halt, added to the credibility of the claims. Despite the official investigation conducted by the British Ministry of Defense, which concluded that there was no threat to national security and no clear explanation for the events, the Rendlesham Forest incident has never been fully explained. Some skeptics have suggested that the lights seen by the military personnel could have been misidentified aircraft or man-made phenomena. Others have pointed to the possibility of a hoax or mass hysteria. However, the number of witnesses, many of whom were trained military personnel, combined with the detailed records and reports from the time, have led many to believe that something extraordinary occurred that night. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Rendlesham Forest incident is the psychological impact it had on the men who were involved. Many of the witnesses, including Peniston, Burroughs, and Halt, have spoken about the lasting effect the event had on them. Peniston, in particular, has remained steadfast in his belief that what he encountered that night was not of this world. In the years following the incident, Peniston and Burroughs both underwent hypnosis sessions in an attempt to uncover more details about their experiences. During one of these sessions, Peniston revealed that he had been shown a series of strange symbols during his encounter with the craft, symbols that he later attempted to draw from memory. These symbols, which he later described as alien in nature, have remained a key part of the Rendlesham story, with many researchers speculating about their potential significance. The Rendlesham Forest incident has become a cornerstone of UFO lore, often cited as one of the most well-documented and credible UFO encounters ever to have occurred. The combination of multiple high-ranking military witnesses, physical evidence, and official documentation makes it a case that cannot be easily dismissed. To this day, the incident remains a subject of fascination, investigation, and debate, with researchers continuing to seek answers to the many questions it raised. In the years following the Rendlesham Forest incident, several theories have been proposed to explain the strange events. Some have suggested that the sightings were related to secret military testing, perhaps involving experimental aircraft or advanced technology. Others have posited that the object was of extraterrestrial origin, with some believing that the craft was a scout ship, sent to observe or interact with the base. Despite numerous investigations and theories, the truth of what occurred that night remains elusive, and the Rendlesham Forest incident stands as one of the most enduring mysteries in the history of UFO encounters. The incident also had a profound cultural impact, inspiring books, documentaries, and films, all of which sought to unravel the mystery of what truly happened in the forests of Suffolk. The Rendlesham story continues to captivate people around the world, and it remains a powerful symbol of humanity's ongoing quest to understand the unknown. On September 16, 1994, a rural school in the small town of Rua, Zimbabwe, became the site of one of the most well-documented and surreal UFO encounters in history. The event, which involved over 60 children and several adults, has remained a topic of intense scrutiny, debate, and intrigue within the UFO research community. The Rua UFO encounter stands out not only because of the number of credible witnesses, mostly school children, but also due to the striking consistency in their descriptions of the UFO and its occupants. The incident has become one of the most famous cases in African UFO lore and is often cited as a compelling example of close encounters involving extraterrestrial beings. It all began when a group of children attending the aerial school, located just outside of Rua, were having their morning break. The school is situated in a remote area, surrounded by farmland and forests, making it an unlikely location for a major UFO sighting. However, what occurred that day would captivate the children, teachers, and investigators for years to come. Several students, including a group of 10-year-olds, reported seeing a strange craft hovering in the sky. The object, which was described as a silver, cigar-shaped craft, was seen by the children for several minutes before it suddenly descended and landed in a nearby field. According to the children who witnessed the event, the craft hovered just above the ground before settling in a small clearing. Some of the students claimed to have seen the object's landing gear extend, while others reported seeing a series of lights around the craft. As they stared in amazement, the children noticed that the object did not make any sound, nor did it seem to have any visible means of propulsion. The craft appeared to be completely stationary, almost as if it was waiting for something or someone. At this point, the children were not alone in their observations. Several of the school's teachers, including headmistress Mrs. Sally Nyamukandawa, also saw the object. They described it as a bright, metallic craft that appeared to have no visible wings or engines. The teachers, much like the children, were initially hesitant to believe what they were seeing, assuming it might be a weather balloon or a distant aircraft. However, the fact that the object seemed to defy the laws of aviation soon left them bewildered. The situation took an even more extraordinary turn when, according to the students' accounts, beings began to emerge from the craft. The beings were described as having large, oval-shaped heads, with large black eyes and thin, humanoid bodies. Some of the children described the beings as having long, flowing hair, while others noted that they were entirely hairless. The beings appeared to communicate with the children, but not through spoken words. Several of the witnesses later claimed that they received telepathic messages from the beings, who conveyed feelings of peace and calm, despite their unusual appearance. What is perhaps most striking about the Rua UFO encounter is the consistency in the descriptions of the beings and the craft. Over 60 children from the aerial school later described nearly identical details about the event, including the appearance of the craft, the behavior of the beings, and the emotions they felt during the encounter. Despite the fact that many of the children had not spoken to each other prior to being interviewed, their accounts were strikingly similar. This level of consistency among such a large group of witnesses, many of whom were young children with no prior exposure to UFO phenomena, remains one of the most compelling aspects of the case. The children reported that the beings seemed to be observing them, but they did not approach them directly. Instead, the beings appeared to be watching from a distance, almost as if they were studying the children. One of the most disturbing elements of the encounter was the sense of unease that many of the children experienced during the event. Some of the children later described feeling a sense of foreboding or dread, as if the beings were trying to communicate something important. Others, however, felt a sense of calm and curiosity, as if the beings were not a threat. The event did not end there. As the children and teachers watched in awe, the craft suddenly took off into the sky, disappearing at an incredible speed. Several of the children later described seeing the object fly off in a zigzag pattern, moving faster than any aircraft they had ever seen. The craft then vanished into the distance, leaving the witnesses with more questions than answers. In the aftermath of the event, the children were interviewed by a variety of journalists, UFO researchers, and psychologists. One of the most significant interviews was conducted by Cynthia Hind, a well-known UFO researcher from Zimbabwe who had previously investigated several UFO sightings in the country. Hind spent several months interviewing the witnesses, and she was struck by the consistency of their stories. Many of the children described experiencing vivid dreams and visions following the encounter, which only added to the sense of mystery surrounding the event. The children, some of whom had previously shown little interest in the subject of UFOs, began to exhibit a deep sense of curiosity about extraterrestrial life and the possibility of contact with beings from other worlds. The Rua UFO encounter also attracted the attention of several prominent UFO researchers, including Dr. John Mack, a Harvard psychiatrist and expert in abduction phenomena. Dr. Mack visited Zimbabwe in the years following the incident and interviewed many of the witnesses. He was particularly interested in the children's consistent descriptions of the telepathic communication and the emotional responses they experienced during the encounter. Dr. Mack's research led him to suggest that the event may have been a form of close encounter, similar to the abduction experiences reported by adults in other parts of the world. While Dr. Mack did not claim that the event was definitively an extraterrestrial encounter, he did note that the children's experiences seemed to fall within the parameters of what he had previously studied in abduction cases. In the years following the encounter, the story of the Rua UFO sighting became a subject of widespread discussion, with many researchers citing it as one of the most credible UFO sightings in history. The fact that the witnesses were mostly children, with no prior exposure to UFOs or the concept of extraterrestrial life, only added to the intrigue of the case. The consistency of their descriptions and the absence of any clear motive for hoaxing or exaggeration made it difficult for skeptics to dismiss the event entirely. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented by the witnesses, skeptics have continued to offer alternative explanations for the event. Some have suggested that the children may have been influenced by external factors, such as media coverage or the possibility of mass hysteria. Others have proposed that the object seen in the sky was a misidentified conventional aircraft or weather balloon. However, these explanations fail to account for the striking consistency of the children's accounts or the details of the encounter that remain unexplained. The Rua UFO encounter has had a lasting impact on the UFO community, particularly in Zimbabwe and other parts of Africa. The event remains one of the most compelling cases of a close encounter with an unknown craft, and it continues to spark debate about the possibility of extraterrestrial life and the nature of contact with otherworldly beings. The children who witnessed the event have grown up, but many of them continue to speak about their experiences, often with a sense of awe and wonder. For them, the event remains a defining moment in their lives, one that has forever changed their view of the world and their place in the universe. In conclusion, the 1994 Rua UFO encounter stands as one of the most extraordinary and well-documented UFO sightings of the 20th century. The event, witnessed by over 60 children and several adults, offers compelling evidence of an encounter with an unknown craft and its occupants. The consistency of the witnesses' accounts, the striking details of the craft and beings, and the emotional impact on the children have ensured that the Rua UFO encounter remains a subject of fascination and investigation. Whether the event was a case of extraterrestrial contact, a psychological phenomenon, or something else entirely, it remains one of the most captivating and enduring mysteries in the history of UFO encounters. On the afternoon of November 7, 2006, a routine day at one of the busiest airports in the world, Chicago's O'Hare International Airport, was interrupted by an extraordinary and unexplained event. It would become one of the most widely reported UFO sightings in modern history. The O'Hare UFO sighting, which involved dozens of credible witnesses, including airline employees, pilots, and ground crew, stands out for its urban setting and the sheer number of individuals who observed the phenomenon. The incident gained significant media attention and has since been the subject of numerous investigations. Yet it remains one of the most perplexing and baffling cases in UFO lore. The event began just after 4:30 p.m. when a United Airlines ground crew member, along with several other employees, noticed a strange object hovering over Gate C-17 of Terminal 1 at O'Hare. The object, which was described as a saucer-shaped craft, was hovering silently in the sky just above the airport. Its metallic appearance and smooth surface stood out starkly against the backdrop of the clear, crisp autumn sky. According to witnesses, the object was stationary for several minutes, giving those who saw it enough time to take in the details. One of the most striking aspects of the O'Hare UFO sighting was the number of people who saw the craft. In addition to the ground crew member, several United Airlines employees, including pilots, baggage handlers, and even passengers waiting at the terminal, all observed the object. The witnesses described the craft as being silver or metallic gray in color, and they noted that it had no visible wings or exhaust systems. Some observers also reported that the object appeared to be disc-shaped, while others described it as more of a circular or oval shape. The consistency of these descriptions from a wide variety of individuals with different levels of expertise was a key factor that set this case apart from other UFO sightings. As the witnesses watched, the object remained stationary in the sky for several minutes before suddenly shooting straight up at an incredible speed. According to some of the witnesses, the object was so fast that it left a visible hole or gap in the clouds as it ascended. The object reportedly disappeared into the sky without a trace, leaving the witnesses in shock. The sudden and rapid ascent, along with the absence of any sound, baffled those who had been observing the event. No conventional aircraft could move in such a manner, and the witnesses were left with a deep sense of confusion and awe. In the aftermath of the sighting, several witnesses reported their observations to the airport authorities, but they were met with an uncharacteristically dismissive response. United Airlines employees, many of whom had seen the object firsthand, were reportedly told to remain quiet about the incident. Some of the witnesses also claimed that they were told not to report the sighting to the media or to make public statements about what they had seen. This suppression of information only fueled speculation and led many UFO researchers and enthusiasts to believe that the sighting had been deliberately covered up. The O'Hare UFO sighting caught the attention of journalists, UFO researchers, and the general public in the days that followed. The incident was reported in various news outlets, and many individuals came forward to share their own experiences. The story gained national attention, and some of the witnesses were even interviewed on television programs and in print media. Among those who came forward was a veteran air traffic controller, who spoke to reporters about what he had seen. The air traffic controller confirmed that the object had been tracked on radar, adding an important layer of credibility to the story. The confirmation that the UFO had been detected on radar was a pivotal moment in the O'Hare incident. According to the air traffic controller, the object had been tracked on radar for several minutes, and its movements had been recorded by the airport's radar systems. However, when the object suddenly ascended into the sky, it disappeared from the radar screens, further deepening the mystery. The fact that a large metallic object could be detected by radar, yet remain undetected by conventional aircraft, suggested that the object was either using technology far beyond that of current human capabilities, or that it was intentionally evading detection. The incident also sparked the interest of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and other authorities, who launched an internal investigation into the events at O'Hare. However, the investigation was conducted in a relatively quiet and inconclusive manner. The FAA initially denied that the UFO sighting had been recorded on radar, claiming that there was no evidence to suggest that anything unusual had occurred. Yet, several witnesses, including the air traffic controller, continued to insist that the object had indeed been detected on radar. Despite this testimony, the FAA's official response was lackluster, with the agency ultimately stating that there was no credible evidence of any UFO activity at O'Hare. The lack of transparency from the FAA and the apparent reluctance of authorities to publicly address the sighting led to increased speculation that there was a cover-up. Many UFO researchers pointed to the fact that the object had been tracked on radar, as well as a large number of witnesses who had observed the event, as evidence that something extraordinary had occurred. Some theorists even suggested that the UFO sighting at O'Hare was part of a broader pattern of unexplained aerial phenomena over major airports and military bases across the United States and the world. Over time, the O'Hare UFO sighting became a focal point for those interested in the phenomenon of unidentified flying objects. It has been cited as one of the most credible UFO encounters of the 21st century, due in large part to the number of reliable witnesses and the corroborating radar data. While skeptics continue to offer alternative explanations for the sighting, ranging from weather balloons to misidentified aircraft, many of the witnesses remain steadfast in their belief that they saw something truly anomalous that day. The incident also raised important questions about the nature of UFOs and their potential implications. If the object observed at O'Hare was indeed a UFO, what did it represent? Was it a craft of extraterrestrial origin, or could it be a top-secret military vehicle, perhaps of an advanced design that is not yet publicly known? The fact that the object moved with such speed and precision, and the lack of any conventional propulsion systems or exhaust, suggested that the craft could not have been of human origin. The idea that extraterrestrial technology might be visiting our planet, often regarded as fringe speculation, seemed more plausible to many in light of the O'Hare sighting. The O'Hare UFO sighting also had a cultural impact, drawing attention to the UFO phenomenon in a way that had not been seen in many years. The case became a touchstone for those seeking more information about UFOs and a symbol of the ongoing mystery surrounding aerial phenomena that have yet to be fully explained. It reignited public interest in the possibility that governments and militaries around the world were aware of UFOs and perhaps had more knowledge of the phenomenon than they were willing to share. To this day, the O'Hare International Airport UFO sighting remains an unresolved mystery. While there has been no official explanation from the FAA or any other government agency, the case continues to be investigated by UFO researchers and enthusiasts. The event has left a lasting legacy in UFO history, and it stands as one of the most significant and credible sightings in modern times. For the witnesses who saw the craft, including airline personnel, ground crew, and passengers, the O'Hare UFO sighting is an experience that will never be forgotten. It remains an enduring mystery that challenges our understanding of the world above us and the unexplained phenomena that continue to defy explanation. On the night of March 13, 1997, a strange and inexplicable aerial phenomenon unfolded over the skies of Phoenix, Arizona, and surrounding areas. What became known as the Phoenix Lights incident is one of the most widely witnessed UFO sightings in modern history, with thousands of people reporting seeing a large V-shaped formation of lights moving silently across the sky. The event, which took place over a span of several hours, has since become a central point in the study of UFOs, sparking both public curiosity and skepticism, as well as official investigations that have failed to offer a definitive explanation. The Phoenix Lights remain one of the most enduring UFO mysteries, fueling debates about the nature of unidentified aerial phenomena, government secrecy, and the potential for extraterrestrial life. The first reports of the Phoenix Lights came in at approximately 7:30 p.m., when witnesses began calling the local authorities to report a series of strange lights in the sky. The lights were described as being part of a massive V-shaped or triangular formation, with at least 5 to 7 bright, white lights spaced evenly apart. The formation appeared to be flying silently across the sky, moving in a slow, controlled manner. It was unlike anything that had been seen before, and the sheer scale of the formation quickly caught the attention of residents across Phoenix and its neighboring communities. As the lights moved across the desert landscape, more and more people began to notice them. Witnesses reported that the formation was so large that it appeared to span the length of several football fields, and some described it as covering a vast swath of the night sky. Despite the object's enormous size, it made no sound, which struck many witnesses as odd. Airplanes, helicopters, and other known aircraft often make noise, especially when they are flying at low altitudes, but the object appeared to move silently and effortlessly. While the majority of reports described the lights as part of a single massive object, other witnesses claimed to have seen the lights as separate entities, with some individuals reporting seeing them moving independently. Some people in different parts of Phoenix described seeing two distinct events, one involving a large, silent craft flying in a V formation, and another involving a series of stationary lights hovering over the city. The variation in the descriptions led to confusion, but the consistency across witnesses of the strange lights and the way they moved across the sky remained undeniable. The Phoenix Lights were observed by thousands of people across a wide geographic area. Reports of sightings came in from as far as 300 miles away, from areas such as Nevada and Mexico. In addition to Phoenix, witnesses in several towns, including Glendale, Scottsdale, and Tucson, reported seeing the lights as they moved across the southwestern sky. As the object continued its slow, deliberate journey from the northwest to the southeast, it was visible for nearly 2 hours, with sightings occurring between 7:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. Given the large number of witnesses, the Phoenix Lights incident gained immediate media attention, and it soon became clear that this was no ordinary sighting. One of the key moments in the Phoenix Lights incident occurred when a former police officer, Sergeant Jim Dilatoso, and his family spotted the lights. Dilatoso, an experienced pilot, claimed that the lights were not from any known aircraft, and that the object's movements were completely unlike anything he had ever seen. He described the formation as being too large to be a conventional airplane or helicopter, and he noted that the lights appeared to be attached to a solid object, rather than being independent lights. Dilatoso's account, along with the reports from other credible witnesses, added weight to the claims that the Phoenix Lights were not of terrestrial origin. One of the most widely circulated pieces of evidence from the Phoenix Lights incident was a series of photographs and video footage taken by several people who had witnessed the event.